disproportionately against defenders of Palestinian rights.
It was overwhelmingly guests on the Palestinian side of things who were being looked into. Palestinians being flagged up for using the word Zionist, which isn't something to flag necessarily. Even the occasional NGO was thrown in, for example, Human Rights Watch.
The craziest, you know what's crazy about this? Dog. Anti-Semitism is far more accepted in these realms of discourse than being anti-Israel. If people wanted to be anti-Semitic, as many are, they openly say it, okay? There is no fucking reason to hide your underlying resentment towards Jewish people in American media, okay? In American social media platforms. There are literally people, I posted this the other day, there are people who in the aftermath of the hurricane, that was just openly being like, well, you know, they do have a weather machine. You know how they are with their weather machine, okay? That person was Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, a fucking congressperson. Oh, why did we ban this guy who said you're going to get banned? I wanted to hear what he meant. Okay, yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. Or this fucking insane account that was like the mayor of Asheville, North Carolina is Esther E. Manheimer. If you're wondering, yes, she is. Talking about how this Jewish mayor actually caused the atrocity. Actually, anti-Semitic people do not feel the need to shield their anti-Semitic perspectives, okay? It is insane to be like, there's a massive conspiracy among people who have literally fought against anti-Semitism, people like myself, who are actually secretly using Zionist as a catch-all term to mean Jew. You got motherfucking Holocaust deniers out there, man. You got Holocaust deniers popping off on TikTok. You have Holocaust deniers who are on platforms like Kick, who are popping off on fucking Twitter. It is so ridiculous to be like, oh no, you don't understand. A lot of these guys are just simply trying to shield themselves from being branded anti-Semites. And that's why they use Zionism as a catch-all term. Are there people who do that? Absolutely. Okay. And you can tell, they pop off on Twitter when they actually slip, let the mask slip and very openly say what they truly believe about Jews, right? Having said that, it is ridiculous because most of these institutions care more about people like myself than they do about those actual fucking Nazis, because everyone knows that those guys are Nazis. Everyone knows that they're bad. But for someone like myself, I present a far greater threat to an institution like the ADL. Why? Because I have a shit ton of Jewish watchers, okay? I have a shit ton of young Jews who tune in. I have a shit ton of young Americans who tune in, who see the reality of what Israel is doing and recognize it as being wrong. That is damning to the project of Zionism, significantly more so than someone who's openly been branded an enemy. Okay? That's it.
These are organizations that we've really relied on in terms of covering Ukraine and various other conflicts. And now and again, they would check an Israeli guest. But there was no balance in what was going on. Israeli spokespeople who we did have on were given a lot of free rein to say whatever they wanted with very little pushback.
Babies were set on fire. Babies were shot in the head.
Whereas any Palestinian guest was asked to condemn Hamas.
But I want to ask you specifically about Hamas's actions today. Do you support them?
Almost as though condemning Hamas was the sort of price to pay before they could be humanized in our coverage. Many of our own presenters, when faced with an interviewee who was Palestinian or who had lost family in Gaza, there was just such a lack of compassion.
I'm sorry for your own personal loss. I mean, can I just be clear, though, you cannot condone the killing of civilians in Israel. Can you?
As a result, a number of producers were really reticent about putting a vulnerable Palestinian guest in front of a BBC presenter.
The mounting double standards have provoked a backlash in the newsrooms of many Western outlets. Journalists at the New York Times and the BBC have resigned publicly, citing their consciences. Others have tried to change things from the inside. BBC staff have repeatedly complained to the network's Director General. One email we obtained, signed in February by more than 20 journalists, warned the corporation's coverage risked aiding and abetting genocide. Staff at the Times leaked details of an internal rebellion over a now notorious report that claimed Hamas weaponized sexual violence on October 7th, an allegation that was exposed as baseless. 70 journalism professors have demanded the Times do an investigation into that report. The Times did conduct an investigation, not into its story, but to find the source of the leak. Numerous journalists we have spoken to describe variations of the same theme: interference from executives and editors, the kind they have never faced on any other story.
There's a divide between the many good journalists within CNN who jump through so many hoops to tell the true story and push back from high-level management demanding that you tone down criticisms of Israel. There was a period of time when we couldn't call airstrikes in Gaza airstrikes unless we had confirmation from the Israelis.
A massive explosion at the largest refugee camp in Gaza. Joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht.
It's really depressing because we would not be doing this in any other place. We would not tolerate the need to ask, say, the Russians whether they bombed a hospital in Kiev. So the double standards are really shocking. You try and change managers' minds, you feel like you're making progress, and then something happens, and you feel like you're back at square one. For example, more recently, on the day that 40,000 Palestinian deaths were announced, Mike McCarthy, who's number 3 in the organization, said in the morning editorial call that we need to contextualize and hold Hamas accountable. And that was reflected in the framing from the shows.
The Gaza Health Ministry says more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed since the October 7th Hamas massacre in Israel that triggered the war.
Multiple journalists, in emails, in meetings, have raised concerns about a lot of the things I've said in this interview. The disparity in the language used, the inconsistency in approach compared to other story areas like Russia and Ukraine, the lack of humanization when it comes to Palestinians, the lack of context about this conflict before the 7th of October. And it hasn't really made a difference because there's just a sort of unwillingness among the executive to accept evidence. For me personally, it meant I could no longer see my future at the BBC.
The lessons learned in 1945, if mankind would remember them, could make the world a better place for all men.
In the wake of the World War II Holocaust, Western governments built a new international legal order, a central pillar of which was the prevention of any future.
So, obviously it's pretty it's pretty obvious what the fuck's going on here. Okay. Smaller Twitter account, but it goes exactly what you were saying about Nazis feeling the need to hide them. Yeah, exactly. Hello, after reviewing the available information, we wanted to let you know Heil Hitler meme hasn't broken our safety policies. Yeah. But it's okay. Elon is pro-Israel. He went to Israel, so like the ADL defended him. After he said Jews actually got a taste of their own medicine for doing unrestricted immigration into the Western world. He went to Israel and he packed it up. You know, he reined it in. It's fucking crazy.
genocide. Since the early stages of Israel's onslaught in Gaza, experts on genocide have been sounding the alarm. In January, the International Court of Justice described a case accusing Israel of genocide as plausible. 2 months later, a report by the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories found that the threshold for genocide had been met.
We cannot avert our eyes. We must confront genocide. We must prevent it, and we must punish it.
The decision by the United States and its allies to continue supporting Israel diplomatically and militarily makes them complicit.
And may God bless the great alliance between Israel and America forever.
And that has put those news outlets and their journalism to the test, caught between the positions of their own governments and the realities of international law.
This mantra that Israel has a right to defend itself, which has been repeated over and over and over again in Western media.
Israel has a right to defend itself?
Israel has an absolute right to defend itself.
Israel has a right not only to defend itself, but to seek the military destruction of Hamas.
Yes, Israel had a right on October 7th to repel attacks on its territory, but it has no right under international law to make war.
Huh. Interesting. Craig Mokaber, who is infinitely more knowledgeable, alongside Francesca Albanese, who is still currently the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories, are both saying exactly what I've been saying since October 7. That's crazy. That's crazy that they are the fucking pallbearers, basically, of international law, recognize the illegality. But hey, the fuck do I know? I'm a terrorism defender and also not a YouTuber or a kick streamer who's like fucking pro-genocide unconditionally. So get your notes not from these people, but from those guys instead.
On the Gaza Strip, a territory that, according to the law, it is occupied for 57 years. So that little rhetorical device of claiming that Israel has a right to defend itself has been used and abused in Western media to provide justifications for wholly unlawful acts.
Israel has a right to defend itself. That was the editorial line that was drilled into us, into all of our coverage. It was really an integral part of the editorial stance. To a guest talking about, Israeli airstrikes killing Palestinians in Gaza, that would be the response from our presenters.
Denying access to food is collective punishment, and that we should all be clear in saying that.
Israel will argue, obviously, that it has a right to defend itself.
People were terrified of using the word genocide in coverage. They still are. You will very rarely see it in any BBC coverage. And if an interviewee says the word genocide,
this is a genocide happening in front of our eyes.
That word, as you know, incredibly emotive, and the Israelis, as you know, will be saying that they are targeting Hamas only.
The presenter will almost always panic.
The Labour Party, of all political parties, which has always had a strong peace contingent within it, is now actually supporting genocide.
Okay, if we could maybe just avoid that language, if that's okay.
Having destroyed Gaza's healthcare system, Israel has laid waste to virtually every town and city there. It has slain more journalists in 1 year than were killed in all of World War II. They are among at least 41,000 Palestinians killed. And experts say the real death toll could be several times higher, in excess of 150,000. The response from Israel's primary Western allies has been one of denial about the depth of the horror and their own complicity. As for the Western world's most influential news outlets, they have suppressed the story. amplified the Israeli propaganda that has accompanied it, and downplayed the telltale signs of genocide.
Western mainstream media have invested a lot in trying to draw a curtain across this genocide and disseminating an alternative narrative that makes the crimes happening in Gaza somehow justifiable. And the reason this is so dangerous is because it creates room for Western countries to create a cloak of impunity, and it creates a sense that some countries are above the law, that might makes right, that all of the efforts to build an international order since the Second World War governed by the rule of law may begin to crumble.
It is impossible to overstate the role that the incendiary media coverage played in the events that would unfold after Hamas and its allies broke down the fence that surrounds Gaza.
You're not Hamas. Israel is a democracy, and as a Jewish state, supports and believes in every life mattering.
Israel was able to perform in front of the world a master class in manipulation of the media. And so you had a narrative set that Netanyahu and Biden on their own would not have had the power to drill into the minds of the public, but for the existence of major Western news organizations promoting it for free.
They're not only morally culpable, but there is precedent for the record for criminal culpability as well. I'm not even joking. Like, during the Nuremberg trials, journalists who participated in covering up Nazi atrocities were also deemed criminal. Just saying. I think very carefully. I'm sure the Nazis didn't think that they were going to lose until the very last moment either. You know? And that their actions would never come back to them.
In the future, when we have a museum for this genocide, we will have a special place where we put the pictures of the journalists who allowed it to happen. There will be a wing for the CNN and the BBC and the Times journalists who were the enablers of the genocide. The Palestinian people will remember them.
CNN said it was a complex story. It's funny to say that, like, oh, this is such a culturally and politically divisive global event. They said that about abortion, too. For the record. It was not. It never was. But if you read mainstream reporting on the matter leading up to the Roe v. Wade overturning, I would lose my fucking mind. Probably lost hair follicles because of the both sides have some issues on this divisive topic, arguments. Anyway. Did this happen already? The Harris planting a tree thing? Did we miss it? Trump is going to do his remarks on October 7th remembrance event. Let's take a look at CBS Mornings.
This morning to mark 1 year since that terrible Hamas attack that sparked the war in Gaza. One ceremony was held at the site of a music festival where hundreds of the victims were killed. Over the weekend, there were demonstrations around the world in support of both Israel and the Palestinian people. The October 7th attack, we all remember this, stunned the world with stories of horror and brutality. 1,200 people were killed in those attacks. Since then, the fighting in Gaza has been raging with tens of thousands dead. Elizabeth Palmer is in Israel at one of the areas attacked last year.
Good morning. This is Kibbutz Be'eri, about 3 miles from Gaza. And reminders of the massacre are everywhere, like the burned out house you can see behind me. It's where Hamas murdered Yuval Haran's father and kidnapped his mother and 6 other members of the family. It's just one of the traumatic stories that Israelis are reliving today, a year after the October 7th attack. The attack began with Hamas terrorists shooting their way out of Gaza.
Damn, dude. That's crazy. I hadn't heard this. I'm glad for some new, refreshing perspectives from our journalism. It's been a year and the government still hasn't even fixed a goddamn thing. They really don't give a shit about their citizens. Yeah. Well, I mean, for the kibbutz, it's like much better to leave them distraught and leave them like that so you can fucking point to it and be like, see, look at this house. Look at this house. Shooting their way out of Gaza is a 10-10 line. Yeah, it's like a weird editorial quirk that they like kind of left in there that goes against the prevailing narrative that these guys are, you know, they were living happily inside of Gaza and then they anti-Semitically decided to attack Israel. Yeah, they were. Like the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. They shot their way out of their fucking concentration camp. It's 100% correct. And if you are knowledgeable on the matter, then you fucking recognize that obviously Israel sets the standards for the violence. Thing is, a lot of the October 7th coverage rings hollow when you've used it to justify genocide for the past 12 months. You can't like try and relitigate this stuff when people have heard it, the exact same sentiment expressed over and over again. Anytime a fucking school is bombed, anytime a mosque is bombed by Israel, anytime an orphanage is struck by Israel and like tens of thousands of children are burned and dying in the rubble, and Israel's like, well, remember October 7? Like, yeah, dude, we know. But the reality is you can't message your way out of the actions at this point. Like,
asked Israeli border security to launch a pitiless attack on young people attending a music festival. It was chaos, a killing spree, and mass kidnapping.
another thing that's like pretty crazy about this situation is that like the music festival was being conducted on the border of a goddamn Israeli air prison, open air prison. Not only was it being conducted there, but there was obviously information ahead of time that this would not be a good idea. Israel, in all of its fucking hubris and arrogance, let it happen anyway. Yeah, zone of interest, 100%. They didn't give a shit. They didn't give a shit at all. Yeah, I know they played EDM music at the October 7th ceremony. I know, I saw. They even extended the fucking Nova Music Festival by 1 day, despite forewarning that it would not be a good idea. Why do we know all of this? Because there's an active lawsuit against the Israeli government. Just so you know. You won't know, you might not hear about it in American news, but obviously, if your fucking loved ones died, you probably want answers for it. You know, regardless of how much you want death and destruction from those who killed them, I think you're going to want to know what kind of like security flaws existed, and you're going to want closure, which is why the family members of those who were killed at the Nova Music Festival have opened up lawsuits against the Israeli government. Everything you need to understand about Israel, or everything you want to contextualize about like Israeli actions post October 7, can be defined with one very simple, albeit reductive, concept. The Israeli government cares more about bloody imperial ambition and conquest than they do about the livelihoods and their lives of their own citizens. That's it. Okay? That was clear from October 7, when there were Palestinian resistance forces and even other unaffiliated elements like criminal elements and whatnot that penetrated the Israeli border wall and went into Israel proper. Okay? And they were wreaking havoc, overtaking positions, taking over military command. And Israel's first action was to bomb Gaza. Israel's second action was to bomb its own citizens. They were more predisposed with fucking immediately punishing Gaza. Okay? Just so you understand, they care less about their own citizens than they do. They care less about their own citizens than they do about gaining territory. Okay? Why didn't Hamas attack Israeli military instead of innocent civilians? Yeah, good question. I don't know if you know this, but they did. They fucking shred through Israeli military installations. They did. How are you 12 months late? Through Israeli military installations. They did. How are you 12 months late? $1,200 people dead, killed. 400 of them directly were in active combat or soldiers. 400. The ratio is 800 to 400. What's interesting about this ratio is that it is a far better, far more moral, if you want to consider it that, ratio in terms of enemy combatant to civilian deaths. Just so you understand. This is before we even think about, Israeli army reservists and those who were not on active duty in uniform, but had actually been conscripted in the past. Remember, if you look at that number, it's like virtually every single fucking Israeli citizen that was killed or captured it would be considered a valid military target. I'm not saying that. I'm not considering that because I'm not Israel. Israel literally would never make that distinction. They kill literally civilians, like straight up babies on a regular fucking frequency without ever even feeling remotely sad about the prospect, without ever having to address said crimes. Like, can you imagine if someone was like, all right, Israel killed this guy. He used to be a Hamas guy, but he's no longer in combat, so he counts as a civilian casualty? Fuck no.
There and on nearby kibbutzim, where 101 people were murdered, some burned alive in their homes, and even babies abducted. Israel's response was immediate. It bombed Gaza, then sent in ground forces. The mission? To destroy Hamas and rescue the hostages. A year later, neither has been accomplished. 97 hostages taken on October 7th are presumed still to be in Gaza, along with 2 million Palestinians trapped in a sliver of land the Israeli military bombs every day. The target, they say, is Hamas. The collateral damage can be anyone else, no matter how small.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of brutal. CBS Morning's kind of fucking... I mean, they started off with the both sides shit, but goddamn. Like, I mean, they literally are... They're arriving at, like, what many people recognize, like, pretty early on. It's, I guess, here's hoping that this is a genuine change of attitude. In the 1 year anniversary of October 7, if they're still being like, yeah, dude, Israel's fucking blowing shit up, it's completely unacceptable. That's definitely a change of attitude overall from their regular coverage. Calling it collateral is still demonic. I agree. I agree. Make no mistake. It's still not where it's supposed to be if this was honest and decent reporting. But, you know, it is a change of attitude that I do recognize. You should recognize that at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and sometimes it comes 21 minutes into the top of the hour. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you could do for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Here is the 3-minute ad break now.
As for the physical destruction, on a recent visit to southern Gaza with the military, we saw nothing but ruins. Recent polling data shows a slim majority of Israelis want the war in Gaza to end in a deal to bring the hostages home. Easier said than done. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, in hiding, is stalling on a deal and vowing to fight on.
I spoke too soon. I spoke too soon. That's just a lie. Wow. I spoke too soon. That is an abject lie. That's insane. Hey, how did Yahya Sinwar become the negotiator? Can anybody prime me on this? Because I remember a different guy who was the negotiator. His name was Ismail Haniyeh. How did Yahya Sinwar become the negotiator on the ceasefire? Oh, that's right. Israel assassinated the principal negotiator that was responsible for Hamas's Politburo, who was responsible for the civil governance and not responsible for the military at all. Oh, shit. I mean, I'm sure they're going to mention that here in the reporting, right?
And millions of Israelis believe Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his ultra-right allies are stalling too.
We see that our government are full of excuse my language, and they do nothing. Our Prime Minister is a liar.
Over the past month, Israel's government has led the country into a bigger, riskier war.
It's crazy, bro. You are literally outflanking the Israeli protesters. CBS showing how anti-Semitic this Jewish Israeli man is for protesting against the Jewish state, the only Jewish state. Does he not know that this is the only Jewish state? What the fuck? It's weird, man. It's I don't understand why you're. Yeah, it must have been a classic self-hating Jew, I think. This is what I mean, like, bro, before the Lebanese invasion, which definitely benefited Netanyahu's like propaganda purposes, like the Israeli society was on the fucking verge of collapse. They were freaking the fuck out about Benjamin Netanyahu refusing to fucking deal with Hamas. With a diplomatic solution. They were angry. Understandably, they were more aware of who was at fault than Americans are, because American media covers it as like Hamas is responsible for not dealing with Israel. Anyway. Wait, what? Bro, this chat is awesome. The guy that worked with Hitler Law. 1 year in Israel, still standing. Why are these plebeian Hamas and Hezbollah even still trying, man? What was he responding to? You will not. You're going to love who he thought worked with Hitler. Yasser Arafat. I at this point, I am firmly committed. If you are a defender of Israel, you either are at least like equipped with the Hasbara talking points and you can appear knowledgeable, or you're the dumbest person on the planet. Like this guy who's defending Israel in the chat said Yasser Arafat worked with Hitler. So many people that defend Israel, that think like, oh, Israel's so fucking sick. Like, why are they even trying to resist against Israeli genocide? Are just stupid. That's it. So stupid that it's like virtually impossible to deal with them. Like, they're not.
Most of the hostages' families fear that means a death sentence for their loved ones. As one speaker said at a memorial we attended this morning, we all know this war is going to end in an agreement. It's just a question of how many lives will be lost between now and then. Gail?
We still want the end sooner rather than later. Thank you, Elizabeth Palmer, reporting from southern Israel.
Overseas now to the Middle East, where Israel observed a moment of silence marking 1 year since the October 7th war, since the massacre by Hamas. Right now, the war is being conducted on multiple fronts, with Israel intensifying attacks in Gaza and in Lebanon, and the region bracing for a possible Israeli strike on Iran. Matt Gutman is on the scene in Israel. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, George, from the youth village of Kfar Aza, and you can still see the bullet holes and the burn scars in houses like this. And the last time I was here about a year ago...
Man, shut the fuck up, dude. Go to Gaza one time, you fucking piece of shit. What do you think Gaza looks like? The entirety of fucking Gaza, dude, for the past 12 months. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm sorry, dude. This is nutty. These people have no respect for the fucking dead on the Israeli side either. Like, they're just, it's simply just a talking point, dude. That's it. That's it. That literally is it. Oh, it's collateral damage. The way that they're assessing, the way that they are looking at the dead Israeli Jewish population as nothing but collateral damage. I swear to God, it is just a way to market Israel's territorial ambition. That's it. Oh, look at these bullet holes, man. We didn't fix it. 12 months of genocide. Fucking bloodless charlatans, dude. Monstrous pieces of shit.
They were pulling bodies out of these houses. There were ferocious gun battles with Hamas all around. And a year on, Israel does feel safer, but that war drags on. Just a few moments ago, we heard a series of devastating...
The irony is, I was genuinely asking if you were okay. You time me out for 24 hours for no reason. No wonder why people hate you. You make yourself an unlikable person by punishing people who are here to listen to you. But whatever, I'm going to listen to someone else. How many calories do you eat a day? I'm having anxiety over this. Dude, shut up. She's like Rocky. She's the underdog. Are you voting? You can't be mad today. I didn't even time you out. Lake McGroove did. But they probably did the right thing. It's valid. Dude, really, really, really reconsider your reaction to being timed out. You can still watch, you just can't write for 24 hours. I wasn't even streaming. Okay? I wasn't even streaming in that fucking time frame anyway. Well, I guess this was on 10/3. You didn't get banned. You just got timed out. You got silenced for 86,400 seconds. Do you really think this is a... Do you really think this is a healthy attitude to have? I love you. Can you say I love you back? Huh. There are 32,000 people in here chatting. Chat's going a mile a minute. Sometimes in an effort to make sure the discourse stays on its fucking normal trajectory, we have to silence people who are spamming irrelevant shit. Because I read the entirety of chat. Please. This is unhealthy. This is like almost terrifying, the way you change your attitude because you got timed out. Like you were put in a fucking timeout corner gently for such a short period of time that you're like, I fucking hate you. And no wonder why people hate you, dude. Because I got timed down for 24 hours. Like, calm down, man. Please. I think for so many people, it is that simple, though. Like, a lot of people spam shit in the chat, and then Fossabot times them out. They don't know what happened. And then they just, like, develop this resentment. They're like, oh, this guy fucking, like, I hate him. I've been supporting him for years and years, and this is how he treats me. Fuck this guy. I hate him. All of his haters were correct. And then they just, like, rewrite their entire worldview, seemingly in a matter of weeks. Meanwhile, I didn't even know this person got timed out. There are probably people like that in the chat right now. They're like, damn. I hope you recognize, most of the time, it's not me. You're probably getting auto-modded because you keep spamming the same shit.
Stating airstrikes just across the border in Gaza. This morning, as Israel marks October 7th, the multiple conflicts triggered by Hamas's rampage are escalating. Overnight, the IDF saying they attacked Hezbollah munitions warehouses in Beirut, igniting those fireworks-like secondary explosions. And in Gaza, Israel renewing its ground operations in the north for the third time. Airstrikes hitting a mosque and a school in a designated safer zone. The IDF saying they targeted Hamas command posts. 26 people killed, according to the Hamas-run Ministry of Health, which also says about 42,000 Palestinians have been killed since this war began.
That's insane. They're still doing the Hamas-run health ministry shit. I fucking hate this, man. These guys are such monstrous scumbags. I hope they can't fucking sleep at night for the senseless brutality, the untold senseless brutality that they have been a vociferous defender of. I really do. I hope they have fucking night terrors where they see all of the death, all the dead and the destroyed lives that they have defended to an American public that is simply trying to get fucking informed. Earlier today, the IDF ordered everyone in northern Gaza to evacuate toward Al-Mawazi, practically identical to the orders given on October 14th, calling for a temporary evacuation south. With the northern front, I doubt will reflect, but Gaza is still a mirror. In 1971, when Ariel Sharon's tanks were ravaging through Gaza City, Mahmoud Darwish wrote, "There can be no total victory with occupation. Gaza will win. She will win. Gaza is a mirror. I think we refuse to look."
And overnight in Israel.
Like, that's crazy, man. Deaths inside of Israel 12 months ago, they still talk and offer humanity to. Deaths that literally happened last night in the hands of Israel to the Palestinians. They just cover as a brief footnote. It's so fucking obvious It's so disgusting. It is so glaringly obvious, a double standard. They just do not view Palestinians as humans. That's it.
Israel, hundreds gathering at the site of the Nova Music Festival to mark the moment the massacre started there. It was early morning October 7th when Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel, killing about 1,200 people. Those harrowing videos showing mass abductions.
I'm reliving October 7th all the time. It's with me. I'm still in Gaza. I'm still with Keith and the girls.
She's South African.
Because Keith is there.
What were your parting words to Keith?
I looked at him in the eyes and I said, Keith, you be strong for me and I'll be strong for you.
The memory's still fresh for those in Kibbutz Be'eri. In homes like these, the walls are still scarred with those bullet holes. You can see the ceilings are charred from the fires and the grenades and the RPGs. Yuval Haran's father was murdered at this house.
The terrorists, they brought a digger and they started breaking the window of the safe room.
7 of his family members taken. Thankfully, 6 were returned in that hostage deal, but his brother-in-law, Tal, is still there.
I want to remind people that we are about life, to remind people that when you saw hostages come back in the first deal, how happy you are. I want this happiness again. I don't want war. I just want my family back.
About 100 hostages remain in Gaza. Israeli officials tell me they believe about 50 of them are still alive. Yesterday, I sat down with U.S. Ambassador here, Jack Lew, who's been meeting with the American families, also critical in the negotiations. He told me at this point he would like to be able to give those families some hope, but he says he is not hopeful right now for those ceasefire and hostage release negotiations. George.
Matt Gutman, thanks.
Let's talk about 1 year of war in Gaza.
What? Do you recommend One Day in September docu-movie? Is it neutral and worth watching? Can it respectful sources learn new information? I don't even know what the documentary is. The standard for objective news